is the oldest soldier in the United States Army's Intelligence and Reconnaissance Squad, which is occupying a vacant chateau in order to collect information on the enemy's activities. Mother Wilkins is always hounding his team for being careless, and he is constantly nagging the team for leaving stuff about the house. Wilkins is suffering from hallucinations as a result of the anguish he experienced when he lost his child. Upon seeing him being picked up by Sergeant William Knott, Mother's friend followed him and volunteered to transport him to the closest hospital that provided psychiatric treatment. Mother is not on board, and Bud quickly stated to him that he needed to be treated and that, since he violated a squad rule stating that no obscenity was permitted, he needed to get professional help to clear his thoughts. Because of losses sustained on a previous patrol, the squad has been reduced from 12 to just 6 men. Bud Miller, the crazy mechanical genius and resident wit, Father Mundy, wants to be a priest who never made it through the seminary. Stan Schutzer is a vengeful Jewish angel who seeks vengeance. Mel Avakian, the finest surviving soldier, was promoted to the rank of corporal in the squad's ranks. Major Griffin, the regimental commander, is a mortician by trade in his civilian life. He commands the squad. For the time being, his primary interest is in generating business for his army colleagues. Because of Major Griffin's terrible talents and the fact that the unit was trying to execute one of his map-inspired recon missions, they lost half their crew. Meanwhile, the squad has been relocated to the north of the Ardennes forest in order to await the arrival of replacements for the squad's missing members. In the middle of eating his lunch in the barracks, Sergeant Knott is summoned by Lieutenant Ware to attend a conference in Major Griffin's office, to which he promptly agrees. Sergeant Knott and his squad have been stationed in the forest to keep an eye out for any enemy activity, while Lieutenant Ware will be keeping an eye on the squad's activities as well. The next day, the squad is taken to the house, where they will camp and keep an eye out for any suspicious activity on the part of the enemy. They had to drive for many hours in the snow. Suddenly, Mother discharges his rifle, causing everyone to jump to their feet. At this point, they pulled over and inquired Mother about what was wrong, to which he just said that there was something wrong with the road. The guys uncover the frozen bodies of a German and an American in a standing embrace, which seems to have been orchestrated by the Germans as a ghastly joke on the Americans. Father Muddy prayed for the body, and the body was buried shortly after. The group continues its journey toward the chateau. They arrive at their location, but before proceeding inside the home, they conduct a search for any mines or bombs in the surrounding area. They were met by a deer that had wandered inside the home after they had successfully entered it. They found mattresses and satin quilted covers inside the house, as well as a bottle of wine and several cases of sardines. They have a sneaking suspicion that the INR platoon has abandoned these expensive products. The group then rejoiced, with 2 of them breaking out into dance. Before the squad was dispatched, they were concerned about dying as Gentiles in Camp Shelby, except for Mother Wilkins, who was already married at the time. Eddie, the other half of the team who died during the patrol, invited the rest of the squad along with him and gave them a weekend pass to enjoy their newfound freedom as singles. They were on the lookout for females who might help them deflower themselves. Eddie and Sergeant Knott were successful in their quest for a room in which they could bring in some females, while Avakian and Schutzer were in charge of the hunt for female companionship. Until the 2 of them come upon a lady called Janice. The 4 of them discovered that Janice is not a true courtesan and has never attempted to sell her femininity to a guy. She informed them that he had been engaged but that his fiancée had been slain during the Italian invasion of Sicily. Janice had made the decision to commit suicide. She had only ever had physical relationships with her fiancé, Matt, and had never had any other intimate contact with anybody else. Janice volunteered to deflower the 4 people just because she wanted to do so. The 4 of them are much too guilty to take advantage of Janice's situation. Janice walked down to each of the guys, in silence, holding each of them in her arms. The squad, on the other hand, is putting their preparations together at the chateau. Later that night, the squad was hit by a blast of freezing cold. After seeing unusual activity in the house, Mother Wilkins quickly notified Sergeant Knott and Bud, who arrived shortly after. Sergeant Knott then informed Father Mundy about the situation. When she heard his voice, Mother Wilkins sounded a little uneasy. As they begin to settle into their temporary home, they quickly realize that they are not alone. Outside the house, they can hear the laughter of a group of individuals. The 3 are even referred to as Americana by the sound. A group of German troops has taken up residence at a neighboring location. While on patrol, Knott, Miller, and Schutzer come across a group of German troops who are leveling their rifles at them, but the Germans quickly flee the scene without firing a shot. Lieutenant Ware was notified about the event by the police. Sergeant Knott understood the next day that reporting the meeting with the Germans had been a mistake since Major Griffin was ravenous for any further information. The squad has been sent to locate their command post, and they are now traveling south. The squad is startled when they come upon a little home filled with German troops. They uncovered the command station, but instead of destroying it, they chose to not kill the enemy and return to their home. It was just beginning to snow when they came across a group of Germans who were pointing rifles at them before abruptly disappearing. Sergeant Knott observed that Mother Wilkins was not there with the group throughout the night. He discovered Mother Wilkins was in the attic and went up to check on him. Mother Wilkins is looking at an artwork that has been hung on the wall. Sergeant Knott considers this to be really unusual. They then proceeded downstairs to join the rest of the squad. 2 of them are in charge of posting outside their home in order to keep it safe. The Germans, who are demonstrably more talented and experienced than the young American troops, quickly leave calling cards, engage in a snowball battle one evening, and propose a Christmas ceasefire to the young Americans. At first glance, the Germans seem to be ridiculing the United States of America. They discovered a piece of paper that the Germans had left in the body of a guy who was standing outside their home. Sergeant Knott and Stan agree to follow the map, which Stan believes is a mistake. Stan is adamant about not telling Major Griffin about this information, and he has plans to negotiate a peace treaty with the Germans. Mel was able to track down the 2 as they were sneaking out amid the troop. As a result, Sergeant Knott and Stan emerged from the trees and proceeded to follow the map they had discovered. Schutzer's Yiddish is sufficient for communicating with them, and it is revealed that they are a small company of adolescent soldiers under the command of an elderly commander. When the 2 of them returned home, they informed the squad of the situation. Later that evening, they see a group of Germans singing outside their home. It is Christmas, and they are celebrating by singing Christmas carols and wishing the Americans a Merry Christmas in their own language. The Germans even gave their guns as a gesture of goodwill. Americans and Germans are singing along to a Christmas carol in unison. Because they have survived the Eastern Front and believe that the war is about to come to an end, the Germans have declared that they intend to surrender. But they urge the Americans to pretend that the Germans were caught in action in order to safeguard their families from potential retaliation for their defection from the war effort. The Americans agree, but Wilkins, who has been suffering from mental instability since learning of the loss of his kid back home, is not informed of the plan. 2 groups gathered the next day in the woods and devised a strategy for capturing the Germans without imprisoning them. They aimed to carry out their strategy the next day. Because these Germans were teenagers, the U.S. Army unit realized that they were too terrified to initiate a war. In every respect, they are basically ordinary armies, exactly like the U.S. Army squadron. They want to fake their deaths during their interview with the German commander in order to give the impression that the U.S. Army has captured the Germans. Later, both sides come to an agreement on this idea. It was then that they returned to the home and informed Lieutenant Ware that they had discovered a prisoner who would be ambushed the next day in their positions. They keep this strategy hidden from Mother Wilkins to ensure their operation's success. American troops were sent out to the German positions as scheduled, on the other hand. Following a brief meeting, the 2 parties continued to discharge their guns into the air, as arranged. Mother Wilkins, on the other hand, hears the gunfire and believes that the engagement is real. When Mother Wilkins arrives on the scene, he instantly begins firing at the Germans, who, believing they have been duped, promptly respond by firing back. As everyone begins to fire, it seems as if the Germans had been deceived by the Americans. Immediately, the situation spirals out of control, and Knott's squad kills all of the Germans except for Mundy, who is killed instantly, and Schutzer, who is injured but lives. Mundy's dying words are a plea to the other characters not to inform Wilkins that the battle was staged for comic effect. Major Griffin, the squad's commanding officer, comes and reprimands them for their actions before returning Schutzer to the camp for further treatment. The remainder of the surviving team is left in the house to monitor the situation and prepare for an assault by the Germans. According to Lieutenant Ware, as soon as they hear the Germans approaching, they are told to vacate the area quickly. Left alone once again, the 4 surviving soldiers silently contemplate as they attempt to enjoy Christmas and scrub Mundy's corpse in a bathtub before wrapping him in a clean towel so that they may transport the dead body with them after the job is completed. Afterward, Mother Wilkins is worried about their chances of surviving their mission. Knott makes a $100 bet with Wilkins, who is gloomy about his chances of surviving the war. Soon after, the squad is forced to evacuate as the Germans launch a massive offensive on the region. The squad became disoriented in the woods as they made their way back to the camp. They quickly ran out of gas while searching for possible exits in the woods. They were forced to take refuge in the woods because the Germans were on the lookout for the American team. The guys disguise themselves as doctors and make their way back to the American lines, carrying Mundy's body with them.